Andrew, it's great to have you back on InvestorStream. Now, you're back on the ground in Cuba on the eve of drilling the next well in Block 9, that of course being Zapata 1. Before we delve further into that program, I just want to touch on the announcement from April 28. It might have been misinterpreted by those in the market given the reaction and given the reference to the Alameda testing program. Now, in that announcement, you referenced a short and early test that couldn't be completed. Can you just provide some further context here around the next steps, the timeframes for the testing, and does it translate to more costs in that regard?
Alex, nice to be back. We've got a common reaction across ourselves, our partners in the market, not being able to take those early test samples that we wanted to in Alameda 1, but it was an exploration well. And it was an exploration well that turned out to be nothing like the offset well information that we had. So thankfully, our engineers are very experienced and fought for the contingencies and the design of that well that they did manage to successfully argue for, because it was needed. Every bit of contingency was needed to get to TD, which we did. So a big tick for the success of the exploration well, particularly given all the oil intervals it found. And life in the big boy world of oil and gas exploration is, you have your exploration well, you finish it, you see what was done and discovered, and then you plan your appraisal well to do your testings and your long form testings, etc. Well, we're a little company and we try to do things differently. And we said, well, wouldn't it be great now we're finding all this oil if we can get a sample and get a flow from these sections while we're in the exploration mode? And would have been possible, but for the pressures that we'd encountered and the design of the well being pushed to its extremes. The very things that make the oil intervals we found so exciting are the ones that made it just not possible to rejig the exploration well to get those early samples. So, yep, get it. Everyone's disappointed. I am too. But let's keep the eye on the ball. We've got some very exciting prospects that have now been moved up the risk to pursue. And what we're doing here at the moment is now saying, well, let's get on, finish the drilling program. Let's do Zapata and maybe add to our little swag of opportunities here in Cuba. Let's hope. But then after that, we've got a smorgasbord of things we want to do. And that's why we're here with our partners this week to rank them, prioritize them, and execute.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. So back on Zapata, it's scheduled to spud late May. Can you just give us some details around the geological characteristics and how does it stack up against, say, Alameda 1?
Yeah, there are two different types of place. There's a very large gravity structure in the Zapata well. That's the target. That's a single shot prospect that we're targeting. There's very large gravity anomaly. Located in a place that could suggest it's the kitchen for the Tembo oil field that's existed in Cuba for a very long time, the origin of which has never been discovered, but which produces incredibly light oil for Cuba. So we're going to have a cracked vertical well straight down, straight into the top of this massive structure. The prospective resource by the independent reserve certifier is 95 million barrels, best estimate. It's a meaty single shot target.
Thanks, Andrew. So obviously plenty of news flow coming up on Block 9 with respect to both wells, of course, being quite advanced. But just so I'm clear, your plan forward, you plan to drill both wells and then flow test them both. Is that correct?
Well, back to the big answer to your first question. Yeah, always. We'll try and do a simple downhole sample, pressure test, flow test while we're drilling the exploration wells. It wasn't possible in Alameda 1, as it turned out, for the reasons I gave. But going forward, we'll always try and do that. It's a little bit more complicated to do it in Cuba too, because the suite of tools that are available to things downhole are not available. So we have to try and do it a slightly different way. That is part of the default work plan going forward, as it has been in the past.
Fantastic. So just finally, Andrew, while I've got you, you're on the ground in Cuba, as I mentioned, and can you just give us a feel for what you might be planning longer term for Block 9 and beyond?
Give me a little bit more time on the ground here. I'm with my partners here in Cuba. They've flown over as well. We've got some big days ahead of us every day to try and come up with these answers for ourselves and prioritizations. But, it's fair enough to say now that everybody's focus is on early production and testing and then putting it into production, because that's the best way for us to fund the build out of the potential prize we have here in the most cost efficient way without relying on shareholders' money. Let me finish these meetings and then we'll have a proper update for the market on my return with what we've decided, what the work plans are, proper recap of what's going on in Cuba, just to give everybody the full picture again, given the rapidity of the news flow over the last few months.
Thanks, Andrew. Really appreciate the update and appreciate the insights as well. All the best for your time in Cuba, and we'll be keeping a close eye on how things progress. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for getting up early, Alex.